Well, it was an Israeli that attacked those National Guards in D.C. Oh, it wasn't. It was an Afghani. Oh, are you sure it was an Afghani that actually shot at those two National Guards in D.C.? I for sure would have thought it was an Israeli, considering all the propaganda and all the news media and the far alt right that claims that it's Israel that we constantly have to worry about. So it was somebody from Afghanistan, huh? Well, welcome back to the Revealed Report. I'm glad that you decided to come back and join me for your hour of excellence in the podcast world. Well, unfortunately, over the Thanksgiving break, we find that two National Guards in DC was shot by an Afghani refugee that came over after the Afghanistan debacle by the former president, Lion Joe Biden. So I want to talk a little bit about the information on this shooter, what we have here. The suspect has been identified as Ramalullah Lakunwa, a 29-year-old Afghan national. Lakunwa arrived in the United States in September 2021 under the program Operation Allies Welcome, the Biden-era Afghan refugee resettlement initiative following U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. He was reportedly granted asylum in April 2024. Here's his background. According to the authorities, Lakunwa previously worked with U.S. forces in Afghanistan, including with the Central Intelligence Agency, or the CIA. He was part of a partner force, a CIA-backed unit in Kandahar. That partnership ended in 2021 following the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. His history with the CIA and prior services appears to have been a key factor in his being allowed into the U.S. under the Refugee Resettlement Program. Here's the attack and what happened. On November 26, 2025, Lakunwa allegedly opened fire in an ambush-style attack on two members of the West Virginia National Guard who were on patrol just blocks from the White House in Washington, D.C. The victims were identified as Sarah Beckstrom, 20 years of age, Army specialist, who later died of her injuries. And we want to say that we are deeply grieved by this hideous act, this very inhumane attack against the Sarah Beckstrom. And we are praying for the Beckstrom family, all the friends and family that is affected by this hideous murder on her. Also was Andrew Wolf, 24 years of age, a staff sergeant, currently in critical condition, and our prayers are with him. Prosecutors say the suspect opened fire without provocation, struck one victim, shot that victim again, then fired several times at the second guardsman. The weapon used was a .357 revolver. The suspect was wounded by return fire and taken into custody. Initially, Lakunwa was charged with multiple counts, including assault with intent to kill while armed and possession of a weapon during a crime of violence. After Beckstrom died, prosecutors upgraded his charges to first-degree murder. Federal authorities, including the FBI, are leading a broad investigation, including executing search warrants at multiple properties linked to the suspect and analyzing his digital footprint. Officials say motives remain under investigation. As of now, there is no publicly confirmed motive for why Lakunwa carried out the shooting. And so I want to say that I warned back in 2021, the Revealed Radio Network was out then. It was in podcast audio form only. It was more like a radio broadcast. But at that time in 2021, I said there's going to be lasting impact. There's going to be negative ramifications because of the Afghanistan debacle. And we have seen many of them. We've seen the initial ramifications because of the stupid decision that President Lion Biden made at that time to withdraw in the dumbest way I've ever seen, probably the dumbest withdrawal in U.S. history. Also, I said not only would there be immediate ramifications, there would also be long-term ramifications, and we are seeing that played out more and more every single day. We find that it tells our geopolitical threats that we're weak, and so they would be incentivized to go after our allies, as we've seen with Vladimir Putin and the Russians going and invading Ukraine, but also we flocked in a bunch of Afghanistan refugees. And you have to understand, they are not raised with the principles of democracy and a republic like we are. Now, I'm not saying they're all bad people by any means whatsoever. There are some that loves this nation. I have friends that are Muslims. I have one that calls me his brother. He's very, very kind to me. He is my dear friend. I love him to death. However, the majority of people that are raised up under that mind frame still believe in the ideas that they were raised up with, which is counter to the American foundation. That doesn't mean they can't come here. That doesn't mean they can't be citizens of our country. It doesn't mean they can't be law abiding. It doesn't mean that they're bad people, but you have to vet them out. And the Biden administration failed to vet them out properly. We brought many, many thousands here in a rushed effort because of the Afghanistan debacle. And I said, what's going to happen is they are going to flood our country with migrants that will not assimilate to the American founding. And now there's all types of debate on what happened with this man. Did he just go crazy afterwards? Was this motivated? And the truth of the matter is, regardless, this is a mistake that was created by the previous administration that took a bunch of migrants and ran them right into our country. And most of them, a lot of them may not even assimilate to the founding principles of America. And it's all an effort by the leftist Democrats to try to act humane, to put on the mask of nobility and say that they're out for the good of people while they're actually trying to infiltrate our system with people that will not assimilate so that they begin to flood and drown out the American way and they can replace it. These are the ones that wanted to replace July 4th Independence Day with Juneteenth. These are the ones that want to replace Columbus Day with Indigenous People Day. These are the ones that want to replace the American flag with the Pride Progress flag. They have no allegiance to the American public because they would rather have their loyalty to foreign nationals that come into our country, oftentimes not assimilating, over the U.S. citizens. They're more worried about Trump blowing up more worried about him blowing up cartel boats that are trying to smuggle in narcotics into our nation than trying to get their city streets safe for the American citizens that have to live in their cities. And so we can see that the radical left's allegiance and loyalty is not to the American public. It is to others. They would rather the government be shut down, military not getting a paycheck so that they can fight for illegals to get free health care. This is the radical left for you. And lying Joe Biden and Calamity Commie Harris is much responsible for the death of this young lady who was an Army National Guard and for the one that is wounded as well. We can blame the former administration for a lot of this. The radical left is the ones that are partly accountable for what happened in Washington, D.C. Let's go back to the time frame of the Afghanistan debacle so we can lead up to where we're at today. We find that the Trump administration had a conditional withdrawal framework with the Taliban based on conditions on the ground and deterrence. Biden comes in and owns the decision to fully withdraw, changes the timeline, and ignores many military warnings about collapsing the country too fast. He publicly assured Americans that Kabul would not fall quickly and that the Afghan army could hold. Abandoning Bagram Air Base first, the most secure strategic airfield, leaving only Hamid Karzai International Airport in the middle of a city as the evacuation point, pulling the military out before civilians and allies were evacuated, reversing the logical order of withdrawal. Underestimating the Taliban's speed, we find that the provinces fell like dominoes. Biden stayed on vacation and the White House was visibly flat-footed. Kabul falls in days, not months, as Biden had predicted. Scenes of people clinging to planes, bodies falling from aircrafts, and desperate crowds at the airport was the sight that we all seen. And then, worst of all, 13 U.S. service members were killed at Abbey Gate in a suicide bombing during the chaotic evacuation, plus scores of Afghan civilians. Biden repeatedly defended the extraordinary success of the operation, even while families of the fallen were grieving and furious. Remember when he looked at his watch at the funeral services. Billions in U.S. equipment were left behind. The Taliban inherits massive stockpiles of Humvees, MRAPs, and other vehicles, helicopters, drones, and aircrafts, many disabled, but a propaganda win nonetheless. Rifles, machine guns, night vision, body armor, comms gear. Biden administration never fully answered how much was left or how it could be prevented. We find that the American citizens and SIV allies, interpreters, helpers were left behind, forced to hide from the Taliban or flee by underground routes. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of Afghan evacuees are rushed into the U.S. and other Western nations, vetting shortcuts, missing documentation, and security flags ignored under emergency pressure. It was only emergency because of your dumb decision. This chaotic refugee pipeline is what critics now point to when talking about unvetted foreign nationals in the U.S., including those later tied to violent crimes like the one we've seen in Washington, D.C. The messaging, the spin, and the zero accountability, which was the lifeblood of the radical left administration. Biden stuck to the narrative. I stand squarely behind my decision, blaming the Afghan army for not fighting, Trump's deal for forcing his hand, and then no senior military or political leader resigns in protest. Hearings produce more finger pointing than accountability. Gold Star families say they were disrespected or ignored while the administration tried to pivot the news cycle as quickly as possible. And so we can see that this was mostly caused because of the lack of vetting. Now, some may say, well, you don't know that it came. Look, I had an idea that was very, very unpopular in 2021. But if it would have been taken heed of, and if it would have been operated by, we wouldn't have had any of this take place. We would have a lot less trouble today. And my very unpopular opinion in 2021 was this. We only had, I think it was between 2,500 and 3,500 U.S. military personnel that was there. We didn't have to evacuate. As a matter of fact, I love President Trump, but I didn't even agree with President Trump on this. We have military in much of the world. You know why we have bases and we're in other places of the world, Spain and Japan and other places, is because we have a presence in much of the world so that we can fight off foreign threats and other soil before it ever gets here. We are able to protect America by being out there and able to take care of threats before it ever comes here. I have no problem with the American presence in the world. I really do not. I would rather us deal with it out there than wait for the threats to come on our soil. This is why I didn't believe in open borders. This is why I believe that Trump was absolutely right by using ICE agents to crack down on the migration, close up the border, and then take out drug cartel boats as they try to smuggle their drugs into our country. I absolutely agree with the president on these things because an open border allows people that do not like America to come into our country and begin to try to attack our country. Now, if we were under the Obama administration, we would have just simply called it workplace violence. Anybody remember that terminology when they wouldn't say that it was an Islamist that actually beheaded somebody or attacked somebody? No. It was workplace violence. Now, my question is, for all the far alt conspiracy theorists that says that Israel is the greatest threat, I'd like to know how they're going to spin this one. What was it? A false flag operation by Israelis so that Trump moves on the Afghan people, the Islamists, and that? Is that what it is? I'm sure that's the story and the narrative that they're creating now. This is why you shouldn't listen to the far alt-right conspiracy theorists as well as the lying leftists that all have one agenda: death to America and death to Israel. This, you can see, is a proven fact that Israel is not the greatest threat to the United States of America. Israel is not controlling our nation. Israel is not controlling the president of the United States. Israel is not the greatest concern. They focus and hyper-focus on AIPAC, and they'll deny the fact that there's other lobbyists such as CARE who helped Mamdani become the mayor of New York City, who also now is on the domestic terrorist list according to Texas, because of their infiltration into our system and trying to infiltrate the education system to try to revolutionize people against the very founding principles of America. I'm not so worried about Israel. I am worried about a Islamist migration into our country, trying to take over, trying to see where they can push Sharia law, where they can try to tweak our laws. I am concerned about big cities becoming more like Dearborn, Michigan, where you'll hear the prayer of Mecca more than you'll hear the church bells right now. With people that has leaders such as Omar, who can't even say that it was Islamist jihadists that attacked the Twin Towers on 9/11. No, she says some people did something, because they can never say it, because political correctness does not allow us to criticize Islam, while the Jewish people are under hyper criticism continually all the time. Now, in 2021, I had the very unpopular idea that we could have kept our military there. There was only 25 to 3,500. It was a low amount of deaths each year, and we could have stayed there so that we can make sure that Al Qaeda, we can make sure that ISIS or ISIS-K doesn't take back over the area, begin to have state-sponsored terrorism paid by Iran, so that they can regroup and rebuild, so that they can eventually attack our allies or eventually try to attack us. Now we even have some that has been evacuated out of there. They came over here, thousands and thousands of them, not vetted properly, that are now traveling back there and traveling back. Anybody see a concern with this? But hey, we're supposed to be worried about dual citizenship by Israelis, not the people that are traveling back into Afghan territory and flying back into the United States of America. May I ask you the question, why don't we see these terrorist attacks from Jews? Why is that not taking place? Why don't we see this terrorist attack by an Israeli? Why is it always by people who are Islamists, or they come from Islamist countries? Why does that seem to be the high level of terrorism against the United States of America? But yet there's going to be wacky people on social media that continually try to paint the picture that the Jews did it. And they're so hell-bent on this ideology that they will turn around and they'll try to make a conspiracy that this was done by Israel so that Trump turns against the Islamists. That's how far radical they are. That's how far they'll go. And they play upon low IQ people that just want to be caught up in the sensationalism of conspiracy grifting today, that just wants to act like they have some kind of knowledge that's above the common knowledge of the day. But we need to refuse all of that. We don't need to be caught up in sensationalism. We need to be caught up in truth. Now, I said that we never needed to evacuate all our military out of there. We could have kept a small amount of people, military there, keep training the Afghan people that want to fight against Al Qaeda, want to fight against ISIS, use them to fight against those that can be a threat to us and our allies. It was working just fine, really. We got to a point there was very minimal amount of deaths. And so I didn't even agree with President Trump on this. I didn't see any reason why we couldn't have military presence there. I know it was 20 years down the road. That doesn't make me a war hawk. As a matter of fact, I felt like it would prevent war. I felt like it would prevent attacks on our country, prevent attacks on our allies, and would therefore keep us safe and our allies safe and prevent war. That's anti-war hawkish. However, those that play noble all the time and wear the mask as if they're the experts and they know everything, while us common people are just a bunch of dunces that don't understand anything. Oh, no, they had to pull out. Now, look, if Trump would have done it, it would have worked right. Biden went in there and he changed the whole order. He changed the whole plan. He lied to the American people. Antony Blinken lied to the American people. Alejandro Mayorkas, he lied to the American people. They promised us that they were vetting them, and it did not happen. Let me just remind you of what it was like at that time.
I can absolutely assure you that no one is coming into the United States of America who has not been through a thorough screening and background check process.
We are not conducting in-person full refugee interviews of 100% of the individuals.
What percentage are you conducting?
I don't have that information.
Wait. What number of the more than 60,000 brought to the country? What number have received an in-person interview before they came to the country?
When you're speaking of a full refugee-like interview, I don't have that data.
Of course they don't. You have to have some level of competency to have that data. They didn't know anything they were doing. They rushed them over there without really a good plan. And then they brought them right into our nation, and they didn't really vet them out. And now we don't even know if they're loyal to the founding principles of the United States of America. And they can travel back and travel here. And we don't know if they're trying to work with the Afghanis, if they're trying to work for any terrorist that hates our country. No, we don't know any of that, because Lion Biden and Calamity Kami Harris, Lion Antony Blinken, and Alejandro Mayorkas, they didn't have a clue what they were doing. They put our country in a very, very bad position. Here's him being grilled again by Lindsey Graham.
Are you telling this committee under oath that 99% of the people who got on these planes in Afghanistan were vetted by our government before they got on that plane?
I want to be very clear, because precision...
Because you're not.
No. Senator, if I may, you are asking me about planes from transit countries, the third countries.
I'm talking about people who got on the plane in Kabul airport.
No, I can't speak to that.
Of course they can't. They couldn't speak to any of it. Remember how much of a clown show it was, a circus show it was? And let me remind you how crazy it was, so we don't go back to it in the midterms. This is why we don't want the radical left. And they're no different than what Biden and Calamity Kami Harris was. They're the exact same. They're the party of drag queen story hours. They're the party that can't tell what a man and a woman is. They're the party of the Afghanistan debacle that lied to us left and right. They are the ones that wanted open borders, and they rushed them over here because they had no problem with flooding our country with migration without assimilation, because they wanted to uproot the system altogether. And this man who began to shoot two of our Army National Guardsmen was even involved with the CIA at the time, which really does bring some questions. But I'm going to tell you that I am very, very concerned with what is happening in the United States of America right now, as we can see that the radical left had no problem bringing in anybody to our country without properly vetting them, and beginning to want to change all of our traditions. They wanted to change Independence Day to Juneteenth. They wanted to change the whole system. They believe we were built on white supremacy. We were built on slavery. We were built on bigotry. They hate our nation. You have to be reminded that the radical left has more allegiance to those that say death to Israel and death to America than they do for the founders, for George Washington, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson. They'll say that they have allegiance to the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution, but yet then they'll turn around and tell us that it's a racist document built by racist people. They'll take history by sound bites, and they'll tell you a story that's flipping the script to try to demonize the U.S. so that they can change it from within. It was President Barack Obama that promised that he would fundamentally transform America by taking critical theory and making it critical race theory, and beginning to push DEI to build a system of oppressors and oppressed to get us fighting with one another in a Marxist kind of style so that they could uproot the system from within. That's why they have no problem flooding our country with people that hate our country at times. And they don't properly vet them because they don't want to properly vet them. This is a strategic plan by the radical left. They criticized us as conspiracy theorists because we talked about the Great Replacement theory, which was to flood our country, to drown out the traditions, and to flip it inside out, upside down. I believe right now what we see is the continuation of the radical left's color revolution. I have said it many, many times. They are enacting a color revolution, which means that they're trying to heat things up in the streets while they claim to be noble, so that they get their politicians coming into the midterms to promise us that they're able to solve all the problems. They're going to solve all the financial problems of America. They're going to solve all the turmoil. They're going to get rid of those evil ICE agents, and they're going to make sure that everybody is treated fairly, which means deteriorating the United States of America while wearing a noble mask. This is the radical left for you. And I am very passionate about this. Some people say, well, you're too passionate. No, I think passion is a good thing. I think people gravitate towards passion. And I am passionate because over 80% of the men on my father's side was military. We love the military. We love the United States military. We love our nation. And it does bother me that there is a 20-year-old young lady that had her life taken by somebody who was brought into our country that went nuts or something took place and began to execute her in cold blood murder. That does bother me, especially when it didn't have to happen. And I'm not so sure that we have seen the end of our problems because of what Biden did under his administration. Now, President Trump is very, very upset, rightfully so. And President Trump now is banning all migration from third world countries. And right on, President, you have our full support. We are praying for you as you are also trying to crack down on the vetting process and vet every one of them that is here in our country right now. I believe this is absolutely proper. I believe this needs to absolutely be done. I am fully in support of the President of the United States. I'm thankful that he's taken this very, very seriously because we don't know what all of their ideology is. I'm not saying they're all bad. I'm not trying to demonize every one of them. And I know that there's going to be the political correctness game where people are now going to spend all their time worrying about Islamophobia. I'm tired of that. I'm sick of all of that. They would rather spend more time defending people from Islamic phobia than trying to defend Christians in the United States of America. They're more worried about political correctness than trying to keep the American people safe. I think we need to understand very clearly that none of us are bigots, but we want the safety of the United States of America. Lion Biden and Calamity Commie Harris and that far left administration put the United States of America in a very, very dangerous position. Open borders, many migrants brought right in here after an Afghanistan debacle, just crammed in like sardines on a plane and flew into our country without proper vetting. There was other countries that wouldn't even take them because they were concerned of the threat. The U.S. is the only ones that was dumb enough to do it like that because Biden probably didn't even know where he was at the time. And now we can see that President Trump is trying to nullify everything that was done by the auto pen. That is great. And I think we should begin to hold some of them accountable, like Dr. Flip Flop Fauci, also known by Anthony Fauci, if you don't know that name. And so I believe at the time that we should have never even pulled out the way we did. We shouldn't have pulled out probably at all. We really didn't need to. But if we were going to, I would have trusted President Trump to do it in a right way. But the Afghanistan debacle, I was on air very passionately. I was very, very upset, especially when our 6 military folks got killed because of an ISIS-K suicidal bomber, which they were allowing the Taliban to secure the checkpoints. I mean, who in their right mind would even think that's okay? Who in their right mind would even be secure with that? But yet that's what the Biden administration done. And now we can see that there is a loss of a Army National Guard's life. And I know they'll try to say, well, you don't know, he might have. Well, that's right. And neither do you. We should have been vetting them out. We should have had more proper vetting taking place. And so my prayers are with that family, and my prayers are with the one that is wounded right now. I do not believe there's some people going to say, well, Trump's going to overreact. He's going to have a knee-jerk reaction, this false flag, and it's going to send us into war. We need to stop all of that. President Trump is not a war hawk. He's never been a war hawk. He's not a war hawk now, but he does care about the safety of the United States citizenry. He does care about our safety. Thank God for it. Now, the radical left is going to try to paint the picture, well, this person did that because of these National Guards down there in Washington, D.C. See, it's Trump's fault. while the crime rate dropped dramatically instantly when the Army National Guard was issued there. It's not Trump's fault. And so the radical left likes to flip the script on the president of the United States and that likes to think that we're dumb enough and gullible enough to believe that. I'm glad that the president is taking things very, very serious, the safety of the U.S. serious. This ought to be a sign, a warning. This ought to be a clear-cut notification to the United States of American citizens that the president is taking the safety of America seriously, because it needs to be taken seriously. It's very much needed, because our nation was on a dangerous path. And I believe that the Biden administration didn't even really care. Didn't really care. But hey, we're supposed to believe that Israel is our greatest threat. We're supposed to believe that Israel is trying to infiltrate into our nation and trying to take it over. It's not jihadists by any means. It's not Islamists by any means. It's not anybody of that belief system. No. It's the Jews that we need to be worried about. And so I want to say I'm praying for the president of the United States. I'm praying, and I thank God that he's taking these matters very seriously. I thank God that he's closed down the border. I thank God he's not letting cartels just smuggle in narcotics into our nation. I thank God that he's taken the vetting process very serious. I thank God he's banned migration from third world countries right now. I think it's very needed, and until we get this all sorted out. And so I salute the president of the United States, and I'm praying for our military. I'm praying for the administration. And I want to remind us why we cannot vote for the Democrats in the midterms. We cannot vote for the left in the midterms. If you want more problems, if you want more chaos, if you want more destruction, then vote for the Democrats in the midterms. Otherwise, if you love the United States of America, if you want safety in the United States of America, if you want to make sure that we're not going to have another terrorist attack in the United States of America, then vote for the Republicans. Vote for those that stand with Trump, especially the true MAGA, not the fake MAGA, not the Marjorie Trader Greens, but the true MAGA that is standing with the president and really does care about the safety of our nation. America, I love you. I want to say, if you haven't got it, The Final Flame. It's on Amazon. It's a novel mystery thriller packed with great suspense, many plot twists. It's got good, clean romance for you ladies out there. It gets very suspenseful at times, the story writing, and it's written by your favorite podcast host, of course, so it's worth getting. You can get it on Amazon unless you want a signed edition. You can email us at revealedpublications@gmail.com, and we can tell you how you can get your signed copy. Well, America, I love you. I pray you had a great Thanksgiving. And I want to say I appreciate the President of the United States, because while we were enjoying our Thanksgiving with family and friends, or whatever the case may have been, the President of the United States was working tirelessly to make sure that he's keeping the U.S. as safe as possible and trying to get us on a good affordability track. And so I salute the President of the United States. And most of all, I thank God for Jesus Christ, and I'm praying that his hand to be upon our nation. Well, we know the church will be standing by Monday, because Jesus said, "Upon this rock I have built my church, and the gates of hell shall never prevail against it." But that the republic has not been totally burned down by Monday. I'll see you then on the Revealed Report. God bless you, America. I love you. Have a great weekend.